morning and welcome to Mental Health Matters. It's me, Dr. Audrey Tang, and this is the show where we take a deep dive into all things mental health and well-being. Today, we've got a very special show for you. We are going to be talking about resilience and processing trauma in order to get through some of the things that maybe have affected us in our past, but also in helping us to progress through life in a healthier way. And we are taking three different perspectives on this. I am absolutely blessed to have Rev Mandy Marriott in with us today. She's going to be talking to us about faith and community and how spirituality, especially when it comes to the church, can be a great source of comfort. We've also got our resident psychologist, Dr. Meg Arrell. She is a chartered psychologist and she helps people through clinics, she helps people through coaching, and she will be talking about how she supports people through trauma. And first, before her, we are going to meet Jennifer McKenzie, who is a holistic therapist. She is also one of our resident experts, and she took the production team and myself through one of her breathing workshops and talked to us also about how she helps people process trauma.
This is our outdoor space where we hold yoga, breathwork and that when we've got the finer weather, and our full moon ceremony around the fire pit. I'll show you that in a minute. We've got our outdoor ice bath here in nature, where I take people through one-to-one or part of the retreats. And we had this studio purpose built for people to come along and heal, to connect with each other, to connect with nature, connect with themselves on a deeper energetic level. And really why I built this at home and turned my home into a wellbeing space is because I have young children. And I also have autism, and I don't like leaving the house very much. So I've got my home and my well-being. I can commute the long commute down the garden path to work, and it works for me, and it works for my family, and they come along as well and help with setting up, and they can experience this as well. So it's all about connection, and it's about connecting to my core values as well. And then we're going to move our hands up to our sacral area. And we're going to do the same again. Breathe the energy down into the sacral. Focus all our awareness and our attention into the sacral. Breathe the energy down. Breathe the breath down. And then breathe the energy up. Exhaling stress. Inhaling the energy, life force energy into your sacral. And then breathing out, breathing the breath, the energy down into the sacral. And then breathing the breath out, exhaling stress, opening up the sacral chakra of creativity, personal power, We birth ideas. Sow our seeds that we want to put out into the world here. Our chakra of intuition, our deep knowing. So breathing the energy down. Exhale. Moving the hands up to the solar plexus, just where the ribs meet at the bottom, just above your navel. Breathe the energy down into your solar plexus. And then exhale. Breathe the energy down. Exhale. Here you might feel your digestive system gurgling because you're relaxing the nervous system. You're connecting with your vagal tone. You're helping to increase vagal tone here, which the vagus nerve is connected to our gut and digestion. Breathe, exhale. Breathing the energy into the solar plexus. And exhale. Breathing the energy down, the breath down into the body. And exhaling. And one more time for the solar plexus, bring the energy down. And then exhale, releasing the stress there, releasing the stress in the gut, in the stomach, in the digestive system, in the solar plexus. Moving your hands up to your heart space, connecting to your heart space, breathing the energy down into your heart space, feeling your heart expanding, connecting to love, compassion for yourself. And exhaling, releasing any fears and closed offness from your heart space with the breath, breathing in, expanding the heart space, expanding the chest, and breathing out, letting go. And breathing in, letting go. Connecting to the heart space.
We've spoken about trauma before, but what is misunderstood about trauma?
People think that it's a huge life event, which obviously it is, which traumatic, losing a parent, having an accident, a near-death experience, these are what we call big T's. But what people don't really talk about too much is the little T's. So, a breakdown of a relationship would be, that's quite big, actually, but it's classed more of a small T. Yeah. But there's even sort of smaller ones. Then there's ones that we don't even know about. Yes. Sort of intergenerational trauma is one of them that I've worked with people where they're reacting and responding, but they have no idea why they're reacting and responding in that way. And then when we look a little bit deeper, it actually comes from down through the genetics, through the family tree. Maybe their parent had been in the war, right? Grandparents have been in the war. So they're actually grown up with rationing. So their fear and their survival instincts, that's come down in their DNA, in their nervous system. And these are the stuff that we're not aware of, maybe, so in other cultures where the slave trade was still happening and things like that, these things come down in our bloodline. But when we're a baby, even like in the womb, our mother's nervous system, and when we're developing in the womb, so if you think that we're getting everything from our mother, and we're actually getting nervous system regulation too. Yeah. Yes. So these can happen before we're even born.
Because of what you do is very holistic, and actually you can do this as part of your self-care. How do you get your clients? Do you get the referrals, I need the help now, or do you get something which unlocks while somebody's having a massage because they had it for his birthday present?
Okay, so I get a lot of people through word of mouth. And a lot of people come through the doors and they're quite shocked. They're like, what was that? Oh, wow. What have you just done? Like, so when I do the stress release therapeutic massage, it's not just a massage. We're actually looking at where you're holding stuff in your body. I listen to your body and help you to release that through body work. And then what's coming up. So sometimes people on the massage table will cry. They will tell me things that are going on in their lives, and then we will decide then maybe we could go a bit deeper with this and we can work together. So, and then some people just say, I feel lost, I feel stuck. Can you help me? And people are attracted to my services really because I combine the science, the brain stuff, you know, the stuff that is logical in a way with the unknown. When you go through something traumatic, if the cycle hasn't ended and you haven't dealt with it properly and it's not been put away, filed away in the hippocampus in the brain properly, it will sit in the deeper parts of the brain unfiled, and then it will sit in the body. So those aches and pains, the persistent aches and pains without injury, you're in shutdown mode, you're in either in fight or flight all the time, switched on, you can also call it, you're most likely going to have like unresolved trauma in the body. So it does sit deep within the organs, the cells, nervous system especially, with our thinking, with it affects our actions, our behaviours and our reactions to situations, to life, to people. And what sound helps to do is it helps to bring that to the surface, because we can't access this stuff when we're in fight or flight or in shutdown. We need to be in neutral. So we need to be in ventral vagal. We need to be calm where we can start to access this stuff. So that's what the sound and the work that I do helps you to do. Helps you to get to that stage where you can then access this. You might be completely unaware of trauma in your body. Maybe you misunderstand what it means. But and then what the sound helps to do to bring it to the surface, to access those parts of your brain, those memories that maybe are distorted, or then you've just shut them away because they're too painful and you don't want to face them, and you can bring them to the surface to be looked at in a different perspective, and then filed away where they need to go, or discharged, released from the body.
You take an even more spiritual approach to connectivity, because you also work with the seasons, you work with the moon.
The moon cycles affect our body, affect our emotions, our hormone cycles. So it's actually looking at the bigger picture of that. And working with the seasons. So wintering would be more of like an introspective time, a withdrawing time, a hibernation, as where we sort of do the inner work. And spring is where we start to see the growth and the abundance and the new beginnings of the work that we've done. Summer is where, with the fruits of our labour, is where we like energy, and we're getting all that energy and abundance and fun. Then autumn is where we eat the fruits of our labour. So we're starting to slow down. We're starting to gather our harvest of the work that we've been doing. And then the cycles, it goes around and around.
I think that's very helpful, actually. Even just taking it out of the context of human body connectivity, but putting it into business. Actually, starting businesses what you're doing with people, how that makes a lot of sense, actually. I like that.
So the modern world now is we just keep going.
Yeah.
And evolution of the human race, actually we've still got that in us. It is to work with the seasons. So a lot of people then find that they're depressed and they just want to be at home, but they're pushing their minds and their bodies to go beyond that because they've got work responsibilities, business responsibilities. You know, we've got to keep those cogs churning, right? But really, we're going against our natural rhythms.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Now, if somebody was unsure but curious about the work that you do, how would you introduce them to exploring some of the options that they can work through with you?
So I offer a 45-minute consultation. That's where we start, and we sit and we have a chat. So I would ask you about your medical history, I'd ask you a little bit about your family tree, trauma history, the ones that you know of anyway. And then what I do is like an energetic body scan. I do a breathwork function test as well, and I also look at your posture and where you're holding things as well. And so it would be sitting here and then sitting over, laying on the massage bed as well. And then we would discuss a treatment plan and agree on a time frame, a treatment plan, and what would suit you personally. And it's like a no obligation consultation as well to see if we're a right fit to work together, because that's really important, because we're gonna be going on a journey, right? With my clients, we go on a journey together, like with any therapist, and that's got to be the right relationship, because you're going to be sharing, and if you do some quite deep stuff with that person, and confidentiality is obviously, you know, goes without saying in it for me, and building up that trust. So you wouldn't necessarily kind of come and spill everything out. And like I said earlier, with the layers, we work through that together. So it's a very nurturing experience.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels that. So your links, if we want to get in touch or book a session with you, book a consultation.
Yeah, so you can start with my website, is lunarspiritwellbeing.com. On there, you've got some information about me, you've got some information about the treatments, you've got the podcast and a blog launching soon on there as well. And you can come and follow me on social media, which is Jen_Lunar Spirit Wellbeing on Instagram, or if you search Jennifer McKenzie, Lunar Spirit Wellbeing, you will find me on social media as well.
Join me, Stacey Bullock, host of Tools for Everyday Living, on E360's Positive Vibrations channel every Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on E360 TV.
Reverend Mandy, this is a real treat to have you on this show. So welcome to Mental Health Matters.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's really nice to talk about a different aspect of well-being, and it's one that sometimes is a little bit overlooked, but yet one which is so important, because there's so much research which actually shows the community that faith can bring us is, it can really help not just heal, but it can also be very preventative as well. So let's start with yourself. What do you hold on to when you need support?
For me, it very often comes down to prayer. That is my bedrock. That's where I go to, is to pray. And it doesn't have to be on my knees, but prayer through the day, little arrow prayers that keep me connected to God, that give me a different perspective.
I like that arrow, because it does just mean that little bit of connection.
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. Have you always yourself been religious? Have you always had that, or did you have a calling?
I always went to church. My parents went to church and took me to church, but gradually I had my own sense of faith developing. Because you can't borrow your faith from your parents, from your family, from other people. It has to be something between you and God. So I left home when I was 17 and I was living in Scotland. I went to drama college in Glasgow, and while I was there I continued worshipping at church. I got involved with other Christian students. There was a Christian student organisation called ANGSOC at Glasgow University. So I was around other students. I was involved with the church. I was a Sunday school teacher. I used to read the lessons. I was up there and doing. And we went away for a retreat. And it was a silent retreat, which meant you weren't meant to be chatting to people. And at the time, I was working with British Telecom.
Oh my goodness, right.
Yeah. I'd been a directory inquiry operator, and then I moved into sales. Now, I felt a bit like a square peg in a round hole. I really wasn't happy working with BT. It wasn't me. I was wearing a suit and, I had a briefcase, and it really wasn't me. So when I was away on this retreat, I thought, Lord, I'm not happy. You know I'm not happy, but I don't know what to do. And this might sound bizarre, but the first morning was a beautiful morning. We were on retreat somewhere in the Borders, and I went for a walk. And I sat down in this very tranquil area, and I literally, for me, I believe it was God's voice saying, Mandy, I want you to work for me in the church.
Wow.
And it just literally felt, that's it. And it felt like a weight had been lifted, and I was so excited. It was a silent retreat, so I couldn't go and talk to anyone.
Oh, no!
So I told the sheep in the nearby field.
I love that.
So, it was just, that was the moment. I was 24, and I'm now 61. So that was the moment. It took a long time before I was in a position to actually go and train.
Right.
But eventually I did, and was ordained back in 1992.
Wow. I mean, again, this idea of calling, it's again been written about a lot, and it's not just for religious professionals, but care professionals will speak of having similar experiences.
Yes.
So there is definitely, it's a beautiful experience to have had, and thank you for sharing that. Now, when it comes to working for God, we do have quite a, I think, blinkered view of it. She must just read the lessons in church and that's it. But it's so much more than that. Do you mind taking us through a day in your life?
Absolutely, yes. The first thing to say is that every day is different.
Yeah.
And also there is the unexpected.
Yeah.
The unexpected phone call, the unexpected ring at the door. But putting that aside, prayer. I like to begin my day with prayer and reading some verses of scripture to ground myself. I might be visiting a family who are bereaved and helping them to organise the funeral. Or I might be going to see a couple who are planning to get married.
Yes.
And talking with them about their wedding, or a family who would like their child baptised. So, those are in the church what we call the occasional offices. So that's my bread and butter, if you like. But the joy of it is I'm able to go to people's homes meet people where they are at.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes at the most joyful, other times at the most painful times in their lives. And it is a real privilege to meet people in that way. Also, I'm involved with schools, so I might be going to a school to take an assembly, or I might be welcoming children into church because part of their curriculum is looking at places of worship. So they'll come into church and I will explain to them the things that they see in the church building. I'll be preparing a sermon or talk for Sunday morning or one of our midweek services. I'll be answering lots of emails. Like any job, there's lots of admin stuff to do. We also have a wellbeing cafe that we run.
Yes.
And it's been very interesting because in the past 6 months, I have been talking to people on a one-to-one because people's mental health has suffered. Yeah. And I'm sure this is as a result of COVID. Yeah. But more and more people are coming to me and saying, I just need to talk. And it might be their own mental health. It might be issues with finance because of the cost of living. Of course. Yeah. So yes, increasingly, I used to wander around our wellbeing cafe and chat to a few people and see what was going on and talk with them while they're doing a jigsaw or whatever. But now people are actually seeking me out because they're feeling there's a real need. A real need.
Absolutely. And this kind of relates to my next question because faith, like well-being, like mental health, there can be some level of not taking the action yourself. But I believe when it comes to faith, it is about having that extra support when you need to take those actions.
Yes.
So how do you tread that fine line between this is support for you and then just kind of, oh, God will take care of it, which is I know it's a very superficial approach, but people have that approach.
Yes.
I'll just put a prayer out there and it'll all be done. And that's not
I think the important thing is I always ask someone, because I never make any assumptions, but I say, would you like me to pray with you?
Yeah.
And it's pray with you, not pray for you.
Yes.
So that they are entering into that prayerful space as much as I am. Yeah. Because I want them to have, they may or may not have an experience of God, but to experience that idea of prayer and that prayer can happen anywhere and that you don't need special language.
Yes.
And I talk about that, when I'm doing school visits. Because people have this assumption that you have to either be kneeling or in church or whatever. And so I'll say to the children, what's your favourite dinner, and I might say pizza or something. Yeah. Thank you, God, for pepperoni pizza. Amen. And it's that sense of bringing God into the everyday, because he is in the everyday. Yeah. And that's in the everyday stresses, but also in the everyday joys.
Yes. It's an integration. It's a connectivity rather than almost what they used to call it in drama, Deus Ex Machina.
Yes.
God comes out and just solves all it. It doesn't work that way.
No.
I like that. I really like that. That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, Rev Mandy is going to be staying with us, but first over to Patsy Wright on the news desk with a very quick update.
46% of all reports to the FTC in 2022 were fraud-related, with an estimated $165.1 billion projected to be lost in fraud in the US in the next 10 years. It's important to raise awareness about the different types of financial fraud, identity theft, and scams, recognizing the signs of phishing. The sender is someone you don't know. They might claim to be from a legitimate organisation, but their email address would suggest otherwise. For example, it might have spelling errors or be a random selection of letters and numbers. Look for unusual links too. They appear normal at first glance, but if you look closer, there might be missing or incorrect letters in the spelling of the popular website, or the domain may end in .biz instead of .com. Some phishing scams may include attachments in the emails or texts. These normally contain viruses or malicious programs, so avoid clicking on them. The sender urges you to act quickly. For example, they may say to you that you only have a limited amount of time to share your information before they close your account. Legitimate organisations never make these kinds of ultimatums. The sender is offering you something that sounds too good to be true. It might be an all expenses paid holiday, a free phone, or a large sum of money. Unfortunately, even though you know it's improbable, you may be tempted to click through just in case. Have you received anything like this? Let us know.
Patsy was talking about cybersecurity fraud, and this is just something that relates to something you said in our chat earlier about you go to people's houses, you go to support people. Yeah. Now, I know in the pandemic there were some unscrupulous people knocking on people's doors saying, oh, this is for the church, or this is for charity, or this is for... I mean, if somebody has fallen for that, how do you help them rebuild their strength, rebuild their trust in themselves? Because it's a scary, horrible place to have been in.
It is a very scary place. And whether people have been scammed, online or in person, it is very scary. And it's very sad when people have succumbed to fraudulent practices, particularly in the name of the church.
Yes.
And sometimes there is a lot of mistrust around the church. And I always want to try and separate off the church from God.
I really like that.
Because I believe God in his very nature is good, but we as human beings, we're flawed. Let's face it, none of us is perfect. Now, the church is meant to be a community of people who represent Jesus. But we do stuff up. We make mistakes. We get things wrong. And arguably, that's why you find us in the church, because we recognise that we're not always perfect. And
interesting, yes.
People will often call people in the church hypocrites. Christians are often, they're a whole load of hypocrites.
Oh, you do hear that.
You do hear it. And I would want to say that, yes, we do fail, we do trip up, we do mess up, but that's why we're in the church, because we believe that when we go to God, we can find forgiveness, we can find strength, we can find wisdom to go on a different path.
Yeah.
So, it's about setting us right.
Yes. And that makes so much sense when you actually have that separation between the church almost as an organisation.
Yes.
Because sadly, people can be running that organisation who don't have people's best interests at that particular organisation. But God is the loving being.
That's right. And I feel so sad in a way. I mean, obviously, I'm part of the church and I love it. But I recognise that the church, over the years, has done a lot of damage.
As an entity.
As an entity.
Yes. And used as an entity.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. And you only need to look back at history to see how that has happened. So I would say to people, let's focus on having a relationship with God.
Yeah.
We can come to the church bit later, but let's talk about God, really.
That's a great way. That's a great way of illustrating it. That's a great way of putting it, because this kind of relates to the next question, with where there is misinformation, where people have misquoted the Bible, where people are using the entity of the church to spread hate.
That's it. And the church and Christianity is never about hate. The Bible says that God is love.
Yes.
And we promote love. Now, that doesn't mean to say that within the Bible, within the teachings of the church, there are some difficult passages in Scripture that we need to interpret, that we need to put into context. That can be quite difficult and has to be handled carefully. It's about not coming to things from a certain angle, but actually looking a little bit at the wider picture.
Yes. And actually we'd say exactly the same about academia, because what you get is a certain finding in academia that is suddenly diluted and changed and tweaked and then used in all kinds of different contexts, and it completely loses its original meaning. So it is about taking that critical eye to Scripture as much as it is to anything. It reminds us to stay on.
And for the church, it's about tradition. So it's about where the church has come from. It's about the Holy Spirit, the power of God at work in us, and how we believe God can bring wisdom into a situation, as well as what is actually written there. So,
Yes. And with regards to that, where do you see the role of faith when it comes to helping somebody who is struggling with mental ill health and struggling with well-being?
Obviously, we're in the business of trying to bring people some healing, some peace.
Yes.
For us, it's about pointing people to God and to Jesus. And Jesus says, come as you are. And I do believe that Jesus brings healing to people in mind, in body, and in spirit. It might not be dramatic healing, but there might be a gradual process. And actually engaging with faith, engaging with the Scriptures can bring amount of healing. When I went through a very difficult stage in my life 9 years ago when my husband left me, I would take verses of Scripture and remember them throughout the day, write them down, put them on my fridge, and that brought such great comfort, because I felt it was God, sort of reminding me that he was very present, that he was there. It wasn't all about the chaos I was going through. It helped me to focus on God, to centre down on him.
Absolutely. That's no different to affirmations. It's no different to practices that people use every day. That's very powerful. What would you suggest to somebody who is questioning their faith? Now, there can be many reasons why this can happen, but one that I know from my own experience is that I have somebody who had been... The church had been a source of misinformation, and in their adult life, they've begun to see where that misinformation had come from, and now they still wanted that connection with God.
Yes.
But not necessarily with the church.
Yes. I think doubt is very, very important. It's the other side of the coin, faith and doubt. You only need to look in the Bible to see people who doubted.
Yes, that's
and we all doubt. Just because I wear a clerical collar, and I'm an ordained minister in the Church of England, doesn't mean to say I don't have doubts. We all doubt. And sometimes, I think God is big enough to take our doubt, to take our anger. Sometimes we can rail at God, and that's important, because actually that's prayer.
Yeah, and that gets us closer to those things that maybe we haven't been able to process, but actually need to come out so we can explore that.
Yeah.
That's again, it's I think this is I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Gosh, no, thank you, because I think the healing process, well-being in general, it's so complex.
Yes.
And we need to have as many options for people as possible.
Yes.
And if one doesn't work for them, that's okay. What might you say to somebody who has tried so many things, but then is losing their faith because maybe they feel nothing's going right, nothing at all? Is it because they're not seeing seeing what is going right?
I think we're such complex human beings. And as a minister, I have to be careful because, I'm not trained in doing other therapies.
Yes.
So yeah. I would talk to somebody from a faith perspective. In fact, it's more important just to listen. When people are listened to, they feel good.
I love that. It's so true. Yes.
And because we live in such a busy society and so many things are going on, actually to be listened to. Now, I can sort of hold what I'm told, and in a sense, because I believe God is present, I can hold that, before God. Yeah. That's how I would do it. Yeah. I'm not a counsellor. I try not to give advice unless I think something is blindingly obvious.
Yeah, actually, that's the same as every practitioner.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Gosh, it really is enlightening. It's wonderful to chat with you. So finally, could you just offer us one of your wellbeing tools to support us?
Sometimes we get so worried about, it might be our own situation, it might be about something that's happening within our family or friends or community. And I often go to the Psalms, which you'll find in the Old Testament. And the Psalms, many of them which were written by King David, are prayers. And they're gutsy prayers. They're real, they're honest. And in Psalm 55 it says, "Listen to my prayer, O God. Do not ignore my plea." And actually, what you could do is just tell God what's going on, whether it's the situation in Ukraine or the Middle East or whatever it happens to be, and just repeat that phrase, "Listen to my prayer, O God, do not ignore my plea." And just whatever you've got,
it releases it. Yes.
So to use that little verse as a mantra after whatever you've handed over. So that's my wellbeing tip, is to go to Scripture.
I love that. Now, we are going to put Reverend Mandy through our Great Dream Challenge. But before that, we are going to go over to our resident psychologist, Dr. Meg Arrell. And she takes another approach to support and draw. And I think it's wonderful to have so many options, because I think people come with a whole background of things. And I can tell you so many people who psychology is not going to work for them because of their faith, and they need to have somebody who understands faith and God, because that's who they connect with. Then there'll be other people who want to go down the holistic approach. Again, nothing wrong. We need to keep open to all of these different approaches. So thanks to our resident psychologist, she's going to be talking to us about how she supports people through trauma.
Now, we tend to distinguish emotions in terms of good emotions and bad emotions. So good emotions may be happiness or hope or joy, and bad emotions, sadness or anger or frustration. But actually, all emotions are valid. There are no good or bad emotions. Of course, feelings can sometimes feel unpleasant or more pleasant. But emotions and feelings are information, and they can give us important pointers to what we're going through and actually some changes that we might want to make. I think of feelings and emotions like our gut microbiome. So we know that we need both good and bad bacteria and flora and fauna within our gut, which is the seat of our immune system, to thrive. We need the diversity of both good and bad types of microorganisms to really boost our immune system. Now, our emotional inner world is exactly the same. So we have this amazing range of emotion that really does serve us well in life. And so when we dismiss or push down or suppress some of those unpleasant emotions, what happens is we miss out on some very important opportunities to pause in our lives and to think about what changes can we make. So next time you're starting to feel a sense of frustration or sadness, rather than push that down, pause and think, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Are there changes I can make in my life to really start to cope better, manage better, or feel sad a little bit better? When we reframe and see our feelings and emotions as information, as our own internal sat-nav, then we can stop demonizing some emotions, but also it allows us to be back in the driver's seat of not just our feelings, but our lives as a whole. In my book, Tiny Traumas, I do explore feeling sad or even feeling rather numb all the time in one chapter. And one technique that I love to use with my clients is called the emoji game. So we all use our phones quite a bit, so it can be something that is actually fun, perhaps, enjoyable to think about some of those more challenging emotions. And yes, we can explore difficult emotions in a fun way. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, and I tend to have quite a lot of laughter with my clients, even when thinking about challenging times, because there is often laughter through tears, and actually that's one of my favorite emotions. So the emoji game. Pick up your phone and look at the last sort of 5 emojis that you have used, because these are the most frequent ones, and try and find someone that perhaps represents a less pleasant emotion like sadness or anger or frustration. And actually you may have to look back a bit further. Maybe you don't tend to use those emojis very much, but find one and then ask yourself, when was the last time that you experienced that feeling? So what were you doing? Who were you with? And what was the context of that emotional sort of expression then? Now, next, think about what are some of the things that could have helped you cope in that moment. Perhaps would it have been talking to a friend, perhaps taking a walk outside, or perhaps even writing about that emotion in terms of emotional writing and expression. That can be incredibly helpful. So this way we are investigating those less pleasant emotions rather than just pushing them under the carpet. We are allowing them to give us the information we need to make those changes. So the emoji game, look at your most frequently used emojis, focus in on one of those less pleasant feelings and explore that, and then think about what resources could be beneficial when I'm feeling this way. That way we can develop some really robust coping mechanisms so that when we do have those really challenging feelings, they don't overwhelm us and we don't react off them, we can respond to them. And that's a really important point. Emotional regulation is linked to better psychological and physical outcomes. So how can we feel our feels but not let them override us? So try the emoji game and see what you think.
Reverend Mandy, this is our Action for Happiness challenge, and this is our well-being challenge, which we like giving some of our guests. So we have given this to Dr. Stephanie, who came in and she talked to us about stopping. Actually, so very similar to yourself, but from the clinical side of things and stopping it that way. But either way, whatever resonates with you, please use that works. Now, I'm going to take you through each of these different keys to happiness. And Reverend Mandy has told us that this is something she's even worked on before, so I'm expecting you to get all the way through them. And in 1 minute, you need to tell me what you've been doing for your well-being that relates to those keys. So are you ready?
Yeah.
Giving.
Giving, yes, it's something that I do a lot, but I also have to learn to receive.
Lovely. Relating, connecting with others.
Oh, I couldn't do my job without relating.
Exercising.
Walking the dog.
Yes, that counts. Awareness, living your life mindfully.
Yes, have to be aware of my own body and what it's telling me, as well as aware of people around me.
Trying something new.
Yes, I do. I've got good friends who help me to try new things.
Direction, having goals to look forward to.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it's direction to live a good life. Doesn't always work.
Resilience, bouncing back.
And yes, sometimes that's easier than at other times.
Yeah, emotions, looking for what's good in people.
Yes, interestingly how people display different emotions and just being aware of that.
Love it. And acceptance, being comfortable with who you are.
Yes, I think at 61 I can be comfortable with who I am now.
And we are out of time, so you've got up to A. You're the same as Dark Sugar, who's been through this before.
Yeah.
She's a poet and speaker, so
There we go. I talk too much.
That's pretty good. Oh, so I just got as far as R, so to be honest, everyone's still doing better than me. So you go in here, Reverend Mandy, with great 3A. You are in there.
Lovely.
Well done. Now, Reverend Mandy, where can we get hold of you? Where can we connect with you when it comes to, if we do want that extra bit of faith, or we want to come to church? Maybe it's something we can explore.
Well, obviously I work in Northampton, in Duston. And if you look at a church near you website, you will find the church in Duston. My details will be on there. I'm on aj.marriott123@gmail.com, and I'm on social media as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bless you. Thank you.
Today's show has been about stopping and taking stock and reflecting. I thought in Business Boost I would give you one little tip that I use with a lot of my clients in my training sessions, and it really helps them to reflect on how they spend their time and their energy. I'd like you to picture some cups of tea. You can draw this out. I draw this out with my clients, and in those cups of tea, the reason I use cups of tea is because they take time. You've got to boil the kettle. It takes energy, which in the cost of living costs quite a lot of money at the moment. And of course, it's very hot when you drink it. So again, it takes a little bit of time there, but also it gives you this warming feeling once you are drinking that cup of tea. And I want you to think about the people or your connections that would fit into those cups. In other words, people or connections that you like to spend your time and energy with. And in those cups, I want you to write down what is so lovely about them, why you are happy to spend your time and your energy with those people, why they make you feel so warm. So it might be that you mention a person and then you say, oh, it's because they've got a great sense of humour, or they're thoughtful, or they're kind. It might be an organisation and you just like going there because you have a good time and they're accepting and they're welcoming. All of those things that you feel whenever you're with that person or with that organisation. And then you do a couple of things with it. First thing, you tell them because actually it encourages people to do that more. And the second thing that you do is that you behave in those ways yourself. Because those values that you have written about those people or organisations you admire are the very things that you want to bring into your own life as well. And if you are not using those behaviours or demonstrating those behaviours, it is very difficult to bring those behaviours into your own life. So we've reached the end of the show, and at this point usually I would be reflecting with co-presenter Judith about the key things to take away, but Judith is ill and we wish you a speedy recovery, Judith. So today I'm very lucky to have Rev Mandy give us her final thoughts.
Well, of course, you would probably expect me to talk about prayer. Prayer, I believe, is putting ourselves and situations that we might be concerned about into God's hands. And I'd like to just finally share with you a piece written by Christian author C.S. Lewis. And he wrote, "I pray because I can't help myself. I pray because I'm helpless. I pray because the need flows out of me all of the time, waking and sleeping. It doesn't change